What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video. If you're at all familiarized with the content that I make on this channel, then you know that I've fully done a hypnosis video, not only to show its effectiveness, but I also explain the psychology of it. And I also made another video to try to hypnotize you through the screen, and you're fully welcome to check that out and see if that worked for you. Links to all three will be in the description, and I will probably pin it in the comments. So this video, you're here because you want to stop smoking, right? If you've seen any of my other hypnosis videos, then you know that I make hypnosis because it's a fun way to have a silly experience, right? Making you forget your name, silly things like making your feet stuck to the ground. But whenever you apply that same principle and you shift your belief in a positive direction, you create a powerful and wonderful experience for yourself. So you have to take those same silly principles that I utilize in hypnosis and apply it to serious areas of your life, right? Now, I want you to do me a favor. Think in your head, think about all the positive side effects of smoking, all the benefits. Don't think of anything bad about smoking. Think about all the positives. You got them in your head? You probably couldn't name more than the amount of fingers that you have, the benefits of long-term smoking, could you? But what about the cons? The negatives, the bad parts of smoking, spending around $13,000 a year if you smoke a pack of cigarettes a day. I know most of you probably aren't smoking that much, but even if it's 5,000, that's 5,000 that could have been in your pocket. You know what I mean? You risk lung cancer, higher chances of developing heart disease, respiratory issues, stroke, bad teeth, premature aging of the skin, reduced sense of taste and smell, higher risk of developing chronic bronchitis, impact on fertility and reproductive issues, increasing your risk of developing various types of cancers in your mouth, throat, bladder. You know what I mean? So there's a lot more potential cons than there are positives, correct? So now the question is, out of all of those positives that you named with smoking, what was one of the positives? Maybe it helps with anxiety or stress, right? So let's talk about that. The temporary relief of anxiety is causing long-term anxiety because not only are you consigned to a fate where you're basically a prisoner in your own mind for the rest of your life, but think about the amount of anxiety you'll have if you're told by a doctor that you've developed a mass somewhere in your body or some sort of cancer. Would your anxiety be helped by smoking, or would you start to blame that anxiety from smoking? So it's causing a temporary relief from stress and anxiety. But if you look at the larger scale in the long term, obviously, as you know, there's a long-term risk and fear of developing life-threatening anxiety, because whenever we have anxiety, our brain is going into this fight or flight mode where it thinks that we need something for our survival. If you are in the desert, you start to get anxiety about water because you need water to survive. But you don't need nicotine to survive, do you? So why do you have this anxiety? Because of the nicotine. And we'll get to that later. Now, I want you to use your imagination for a second. Answer this honestly. When your Juul starts running low, or you're on your last cigarette, 10 being absolutely life or death panic mode, and 1 being completely zen and calm and just free of any type of worry. How anxious do you feel from 1 to 10? If you are on your last cigarette or your Juul, your vape starts running low and you have to charge it, how anxious do you feel in that moment? How much anxiety do you have? Probably somewhere between a 4 or a 7, right? Because you're anxious, but you're not that anxious because you know that you can just hurry home and charge it or buy a next pack of cigarettes, right? But what if one day, for example, you suddenly coughed and blood came out? If you coughed into your hand and blood was on your hand, this anxiety wouldn't be at a 4 or a 7 anymore. It would probably climb much higher, right? To alarming levels, maybe an 8 or a 9, right? Now, what if you went to the doctor and they told you, I'm afraid, but we have bad news. We found something. If you care at all about yourself, this would probably be at a 10 right now, right? The anxiety level. Your heart would start racing and you would start panicking, and, you would start to really have anxiety. So I want you to do a little time traveling, and I want you to close your eyes right now, okay? I want you to close your eyes, really close them, and let your chin touch your chest and just sleep. Now, regardless of your age, if you're on the younger side, I want you to imagine that you're having a conversation with your 50, 60, 70, 80-year-old self, and they're on breathing assistance with the device. They're begging you and pleading you to take control of your own life because this is going to be your fate in the future. They're telling you that this is your future if you don't change. How does that make you feel? And how would it make you feel if I told you that if I were to snap my fingers, this vision will go away and this 50, 60, 70-year-old, 80-year-old you is actually happy now, not in a bed, not having any breathing issues, and they're happy. Imagine your future self playing with your future kids and grandkids, and you're living your life to the fullest with your partner. You guys are happy, you guys are healthy, and everything is good. Now, with this time travel that you've just created for yourself, you see how instantly in one moment that power of belief has created a different entire outcome for you. Now, you can wake back up and look back into my eyes. Now, when you think about smoking, right? Let's say hypothetically I offered you $1 billion. Would you stop smoking? Of course you would. Even for $100 million, you would stop smoking. Even for $1 million, you would stop. So it's not that you don't have the physical ability to stop, right? Because to stop smoking, what do you have to do? Think about it. If you need to stop smoking, what do you physically have to do? It's an easy answer. Not smoke, right? If you don't want to smoke, then don't smoke, right? So it's not a matter of ability, but rather motivation. Now, because I don't have $1 billion I'm offering you, there's no motivation. So the thing is, with hypnosis, you create that belief and that motivation for yourself. You're taking your health into concern. You're taking your financial health into concern. So what I want you to do is I want you to, if you have a Juul or a cigarette anywhere near you, I want you to take it out, and you can pause this video while you're looking for it. Okay. Now, if you have that out, I want you to take it and I want you to just focus on it. If you have a cigarette, just hold it like this and look at it. If you have a Juul, just focus on it. Now, in your head, I want you to imagine, just use your creativity. What if every time you tasted that or put it to your lips, it tasted like actual shit and smelled like shit? How likely would you still want it? Just use your creativity and your imagination for a second. What if every time you took a pull, a hit, or a puff, the flavor and the smell just got progressively worse and worse? Think back to the worst smell that you think has ever entered your nose, whether it was a really bad fart or a bad porta potty experience, or maybe someone was really, really musty one day or had really, really bad breath. Out of all of these things, find the single worst experience that you've ever had with smelling something and just associate it with the Juul and cigarette. Almost to the point where every time, just imagine it, every time you think about touching it to your lips, you instantly gag. You feel this thing in the back of your throat and you don't know why. You can't explain it, but you just feel sick and you develop the need to throw up. Every time you think about it, the closer and closer it gets to your lips, the stronger this feeling is. And just create that power of belief for yourself. That every time it comes closer to your mouth, you just feel the urge to throw up. Now, I want you to do me a favor. Imagine how it would be for you if you tried to take a hit or a puff, but the Juul was dead, for example, or the cigarette wasn't lighting for some reason. Maybe the cigarette was really mushy and meshy and sloppy and wet. What would happen? Physically, nothing would happen. If your Juul was dead and you were trying to get a hit out of it, but it was dead and nothing was coming out, or if you have a cigarette and you're trying to light it and nothing is happening because the cigarette is really mushy. You can't light a fucking cigarette ball and smoke that, right? You can't. Now, what would happen? Nothing. Nothing would happen. Nothing physically would happen, right? Now, imagine you wanted to take a pull or a puff or a hit of either a cigarette or a Juul, but now associate and create that belief in your head that that bad smell, that feeling of you wanting to gag returns every time you think about taking a puff or a pass. So not only are you not getting anything like before, but you're getting a mouth full of poo. So you're not only just getting nothing out of it, but what's worse than getting nothing? A negative consequence of getting shit in your mouth, right? So when we create an experience or in our mind about something, eventually after a while, it's not pretending anymore. This experience and this belief becomes true. If your mind became so focused on the idea that smoking is the worst and shittiest, literally, feeling and action that you can bring yourself to do, think about it. How likely would you want to do it? Create that belief in your mind. Think about this question. If every time I take a hit of this or I smoke this, it tasted like shit, would I still want to hit it? Would it still be worth hitting it? Then no, you don't want the taste of shit in your mouth just to get that temporary fix, right? So you have to create this belief and association in your mind to the point where it's no longer pretending, but rather you're experiencing that as your new reality. Now, with the whole pretending thing, I don't want you to just pretend for the sake of pretending, because, for example, you can pretend that my shirt is pink when obviously we all know it's black, right? So why should you just pretend that every puff is shit, right? Well, tell me how it isn't. Who's to say that every puff you have been taking hasn't been shit? When you think of shit, you think of something wasteful or non-functional or something that would cause damage to your body the more you're breathing it in. You see what I'm saying? So how is that any different from what smoking actually is? And something like shit, which is wasteful and non-functional, isn't that what you're turning your lung into? Shit is waste and it's not functional. There's no function to your body for shit, which is why you remove it, and it's wasteful. Well, when you smoke, you're turning your organs into the same wasteful, non-functional shit that your body removes every day. I want you to also think about something a little bit deep. If you had a dying family member or a relative, do you feel like you could honestly donate one of your organs to save their life? Do you feel like your lungs are healthy enough to where if you had to donate, you would be able to? If you feel like you can donate right now, between 1 and 10, 10 being the best and most fully developed organ, the best, healthiest organ, and 1 being completely useless, what number would you put your organs at right now? Would you put your organs at 10, fully functional, the best organs? Would you put it at 1, or would you put it somewhere in between? Now, what I want you to do is I want you to take that number and subtract it by 1 every 5 years. So if your number was at 8, you're now at 7 5 years from now. Then after 10 years, your number is going to be at 6. After 15 years, your number is going to be at 5. Every year that accumulates of you smoking, your body is losing its value. I want you to think back to what I said about if someone offered you $1 million to stop smoking, you would, right? What if someone said, okay, if you don't stop smoking, you'll be in debt $1 million. You'll owe $1 million. You'll have to pay $1 million. Then you would want to stop smoking even more, right? Who has $1 million just lying around to just give out for smoking expenses? Well, think about it. You live in America. I mean, have you seen the medical expenses here? So it's not completely pretending now, is it? You know, but I want you to really remind yourself, all jokes aside, that smoking is a literal shitty and associated with the smell, a shitty thing to do. I want this to be your reality now. I don't want you to try to pretend. I don't want you to try and slowly ease into that feeling. I want it to be where every time you think about smoking, that smell that you've created comes back. And every time you think about touching your lips with it, you want to throw up, and you just feel that sudden urge to just vomit everywhere. Anytime you think about bringing a cigarette or a jewel to your mouth, I want you to do me a favor. Ask yourself, when you smoke, what does it do? It releases a bit of stress. It puts you at ease a little bit. Yes, maybe. When you smoke, what's your goal? To release stress, to release anxiety, to get your nicotine fix. You're not thinking, hey, I want to put toxic chemicals in my body today. You want to release stress. It's the temporary escape that you're conjuring in your mind, and you're associating that positive feeling of release and relief and anxiety relief. You're creating that positive thought with a negative action. The negative action of smoking, it's causing you a temporary positive relief. So what I want you to do is this. Because right now, to this point, moving forward, it's not about trying. It's not about looking at it and saying, I really want to give this up, but it's hard. It's not hard. Tell yourself that it's easy. Make your belief your reality. Don't look at it like it's a light that's slowly dimming. Look at it like you're turning a light switch off. I don't want it anymore. And why can't you make that for yourself? I'm not saying you can't. You shouldn't be telling yourself you can't either. Changes can happen overnight. I've seen it. I've done this with multiple people. I've hypnotized many people to stop smoking, to get better grades, to do the things that they need to do in their life. And it happens just like that. There's no process where it takes a long time. You can stop whenever you want to stop. And that time should be right now. Look at that jewel in that cigarette and ask yourself, what is it about this darn thing that's making me think that I need it when I know I don't need it? I know that I don't need this to survive. What's in here that's making me think I need it? The nicotine. The nicotine is the cause of this false belief. It's the desire. The nicotine is causing the desire. But right now, the only thing that you're desiring is slavery. Now, let me ask you something. If I were to take a cigarette or a jewel and I left all the harmful chemicals in that jewel, right? But I just snapped nicotine into existence and there was no addictive factor in it. Would you feel the need to smoke it? Absolutely not. There would be no need. You would just be putting a bunch of harmful chemicals in your body for no reason. If I told you you can't get that nick anymore from that jewel or from that cigarette, there would be no physical necessity for you to do it. So let's go along with that belief. If I took away that feeling, that need to get nicotine, what would you want in your mind to substitute that feeling of slavery for? What would you want to feel? Freedom, right? And how would you feel if I, let's say hypothetically, did have magic powers and snapped the desire to smoke right out of your head? Then what would you feel? Let's say I had magic powers, right? And I just told you, just play along. Close your eyes. And I want you to imagine that there's a picture of a cigarette or a jewel on a chalkboard. And now imagine that I'm standing in front of that chalkboard and the image of that cigarette and you wanting it, or that jewel. Now imagine that. Now imagine my hand is just waving it away slowly. And every time my hand goes against it, back and forth, it's just slowly fading away into obscurity. Now what do you feel? Now what if I pointed at you and waved the wand at you and told you, I've now cured you of the desire to smoke. You no longer need nicotine. How would you feel? Just feel that for a moment. What would be the first thing that would come to your head if I had magic powers and I told you you don't need this nicotine anymore? You would feel free, right? You would feel relief that you don't need it anymore. So, in doing all this, eventually that belief becomes your reality. Now, let me just preface this by saying I don't want you to try to trick yourself into thinking that cigarettes don't exist or anything like that, or nick or jewel doesn't exist, because that's not how the mind works. If I tell you to think of a fat lady with roller skates, you'll laugh because instantly your mind thinks of it. I told you don't think of a fat lady with roller skates. Don't think of a giant pink elephant with sunglasses. You see how I'm telling you not to do it, but instantly you're doing it? Because in order to not think about something, you first have to think about it, right? So it's not about forgetting to think about smoking or jewels or anything like that, because there's going to be times where you're going to cross that store that you're used to going to, or that friend that is always going to remind you of a jewel. You're going to go out and see people jeweling and smoking. So you're going to be surrounded by it. It's going to be in your environment every now and then. There's going to be people that probably offer it to you if they know you as a smoker, right? So it's not about forgetting about the existence of smoking or the existence of jewels or the existence of cigarettes. But it's rather that every time you think about smoking, instantly a bunch of negative thoughts are associated with it. That shitty smell feeling, that lack of freedom, your future self talking to you, your organs crying out, everything. So look at your cigarette or vape and put it down for a second. Just put it on a chair or a desk next to you And just look at it for a second. Now, in your mind, I want you to imagine 10 years from now that you haven't picked that up in 10 years and you were perfectly fine without it. And whenever you look at it and someone asks you, aren't you going to take a hit? And you just shrug your shoulders like, no, I don't really need it. What words pop into your head? Freedom, liberation, relief. You've created that feeling of freedom, so why not make it a reality? Anything that goes on in your head, who's to say it can't go on in real life too? It's very, very doable. I didn't imagine you to imagine a dragon with scorching fire, something that's not possible. I asked you to do something very, very real, very, very human, and something very, very in tune with reality, right? So why not make that your entire reality? Now is that time. So what I want you to do is I want you to pick it back up and describe to me, or obviously I can't hear you. You can put it in the comments if you want. How does that make you feel picking it back up after all this? Don't those feelings in your head of anxiety return when it's in your hand? Just look at it. That feeling of anxiety when your jewel is about to die, or when you're running out of cigarettes, or you need a lighter and you're, all anxious and you need to get it quickly. You need to pull it out of your pocket. You need to worry about when you're going to take a smoke break at work. You're worrying about all these things, how much money you're going to have to spend on this addiction. Don't all those feelings of anxiety come back? So now you have these negative associations with this little fucking thing that you really never ever needed your whole life. Wouldn't it be great if I was magical and I could just take it and throw it all away? If I can just take all of those feelings and consign it to a little ball in your head like this, just imagine it. And I just take all those feelings out and I just throw it out. Wouldn't that feel amazing? Well, if you want those feelings to be thrown out, then you have to throw out the physical thing that's causing those feelings. Your mind is going to associate all of these feelings with the jewel, no matter if you have a temporary relief or not. So you have to ask yourself, is this temporary relief of stress worth all of this other anxiety? Now, also, I want you to do me a favor. People are also talking about the chemicals and how they impact the brain, the nicotine and all that. Well, one, if nicotine was something that made you have to smoke, then there would never be a case of anybody ever getting over smoking, right? There would never be anybody that's clean or sober, right? Because clearly they've taken the measures to stop smoking. So it's not like nicotine is a must to enter your body. It just makes it very, very hard. But you have the control now. Think about it like this. Your brain with chemicals, when you're in a relationship with somebody, your brain, it has different amounts of serotonin, different amounts of dopamine. Your brain is releasing chemicals that are addictive. A very, very similar way that your body and your brain get addicted to a cigarette is the same way you can get addicted to a partner. Now imagine this partner starts to be abusive, starts to be controlling, manipulative, argumentative, toxic. They cheat on you. They treat you like dirt. They talk bad about you. They drag your name through the mud. How are those feelings? Not too good, right? Now, the power of belief is very strong. You're going to lose feelings for this individual. Are you not? Now, the reason why you're starting to lose feelings for this individual is because when your brain thinks about this individual, it's negatively reinforced with the ideas of hurt, physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. This person is not good for you. You see what I'm saying? So in that same sense, you can tell yourself that juuling and smoking is just as bad. Answer me this. Why are you no longer with your toxic ex? Because in your brain, whenever you think about this individual, what feelings come? Negative thoughts or positive thoughts? And I want you to think about a toxic ex, not a good ex where you guys ended on good terms, but ones that hurt you frequently. Either it was a girl that was just always a bitch or a guy that was just always being a dickhead. Why is it that you still do not want to date this person? Because whenever you think about this person, your brain has nothing but negative thoughts reinforcing the memory of this person. It's not that you forget about this person existing, because if I ask you to remember the first time you guys met, first time you guys kissed, the first time you guys hugged, the first time you guys hung out, if I asked you to remember in vivid details a big argument that you guys had, you'd probably be able to do it, or why you guys argued, or whose fault it was, or what this person did wrong to you. You'd be able to explain it in vivid detail, most likely, right? So it's not that you are hypnotizing your brain in that moment to forget that they exist. Yes, they're out of sight and out of mind, but if somebody asked you about them, you would remember everything instantly. But what you're doing is you're just passively forgetting about them. You're not going to spend every waking hour of your life remembering them or thinking about them, right? But the thing is, memories don't go away. So you're not forgetting about this person. You're not hypnotizing yourself to forget about this person completely. And if you are, all these negative thoughts will come back as soon as you're reminded. So what I'm doing here is not to have you forget about the existence of these toxic things, but to reinforce the idea of these things with negatives. So what do you want to do when you look at that now? What I want you to do is I want you to throw it away. I want you to tell yourself you no longer need it. And I want you to tell yourself, I want you to remind yourself of that feeling that you had of freedom when you were away from it. That long-term freedom, looking at yourself in the future and thinking how grateful you are that you made all of these decisions today. So I don't want you to stop it next month, not tomorrow, but right now. This hypnosis worked for you is what I want you to tell yourself over and over and over. And I want you to tell yourself, the more and more you think about smoking, the more that shit smell comes, the more and more you gag. Every time that thought about smoking comes in your head, the more and more you want to throw up. And every time you think about taking a cigarette and throwing it in the garbage, the more free you feel, the more liberated you feel. And I want you to associate that in your head. I want this to be an impulse for you. Every time you think about smoking, you just feel like you want to throw up. And every time you think about throwing it in the garbage, the more money you see in your future, the more happy you feel in the future, the more healthy you feel in the future. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. I feel like I've been talking for like an hour. This is probably some of my most intricate work yet. Make sure you guys like, comment, share, and subscribe. I'm sweating it up here. I appreciate, when you guys like, comment, share, and you give me your feedback. These videos take a shit ton of work. I'm not getting paid for any of this. This is all purely out of the goodness of my heart and the desire to see you create these beautiful changes in your brain that I know 100% you can create for yourself. You need to not listen to those naysayers, all those outside voices telling you it's going to take long, you have to go to therapy, because that's just not true. It's simply not the case. What I've done with my own brain, being able to say no, being able to say yes, I'm not a superhuman. I don't have superpowers. It's just willpower. And your willpower can be as strong as you want it to be if you allow yourself to take control of your own mind. I've been with people who I've hypnotized that never thought it was a chance in hell. They walked into that hypnosis. I asked them, do you even want to stop smoking? They were like, not really. I want to keep smoking. And then at the end of it, they just completely have no desire to do it. So remind yourself, make that impulse in your head. Again, please like, share, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next one.